Lakota Star Knowledge says there's no such thing as demons or angels or heaven or hell or God or Satan. Lakota Star Knowledge says it's something completely different out there. Okay? And here too, by the way. That whole idea, yeah, God, angels, and heaven versus Satan, demons, and hell, that is a dualistic concept based on good versus evil. And that concept was created by man to control others, yeah, to oppress others. And this creates an abuser victim cycle or an oppressor victim cycle. And that goes into the thinking too, yeah. And it says, okay, if you're on our side, you'll always be happy. You'll always, be protected. You'll never feel pain. Things like that. And it's to get you emotionally involved to the point where you try to force yourself to live in only one emotion, and that begins an addictive way of thinking, and that creates something called duality. Yeah, and you'll get to the point of thinking in a linear way too, where you say that the more you go on this path, the better you are. That's called linear. You only go in one direction, and you think that the further you go, the better you are. Lakota Star Knowledge says no, all of that is bullshit. Yeah, because in reality, life is not really like that. In some instances, yes, we do go forward, but there's other instances where we can go backwards. Because as we go forwards and we're living healthy, we learn and we are able to comprehend more and more. So it's good to look at something that you learned several years ago because you can see more now. Yeah? So when you look at your past, you might see something that you didn't see before, which means you learned something new from the past. And then you bring that information into your present life, present day, here and now. That's nonlinear. The other aspect to that is visualizing the future the way you would like it to be and enjoy it as if you have it now, whatever it is. And then you come back to the present moment. It has to be a healthy, realistic visualization. Yeah. So don't be visualizing that you're Wonder Woman and you have an invisible plane and not that. That's fantasy. Make it realistic. And then what that process is doing is it's putting something in your mind that's going to give you inspiration. So you're learning from the future. You're receiving a gift from the future when you do that. So you bring that back to come back to the present moment after your visualization, and then you have this tool with you to help you in your life, your daily life, present moment, here and now. See? So you're getting something from the future to help you. This is nonlinear. This is the Lakota Star Knowledge way. Reality begins within. This is the reason why. Yeah, it begins in your sacred center. This is where your physical body, your mind, and your emotions and your soul connect. Deep, deep, deep inside of you. That's called your sacred center. Yeah. So when you do your best to take care of these four parts, and you follow this way, uh, you learn that difficulties are not bad. Yeah, they are incomplete experiences. I know sometimes they hurt. I know that. You know, I've been through a lot, but it's not bad because from those experiences, the difficulties, you express the emotion constructively and then bring your mind in and start thinking, how do you make the best of the situation? How do you What do you learn from this? And that's going to help you. It's going to start you on the healing road. And that on that path you're going to learn new things. Yeah? You're going to receive wisdom and peace. These are blessings. So when you work it like this, you're transforming it into a blessing. This is how we see difficulties in the Lakota Star Knowledge way. So they're not bad. It's just a learning time. And as long as you do this, you're still on your path. Yeah. As long as you do this, you're still on your path. And as you're learning, you're moving. You don't even feed it, but you're moving forward. And then comes the second principle: like attracts like. And then pretty soon you come into a situation that's better than the one that you left, or that left you. Yeah? This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. This is a healthy thing. So in this way of living, difficulties are not bad. Yeah? Oh, another thing you learn too is that weaknesses are just as important as strengths. Yeah? Because weaknesses teach you things. And as long as you're learning, it's not a bad thing. Because sometimes we have to learn how not to do something. Yeah? That's just as important as learning something. Yeah? Learning how not to do something. That is very important. And then you stop labeling things as good and bad. Yeah? Because see, the universe was created on negative and positive, neutral energies, as well as other energies. There's more than two ways. Okay? In the Lakota Star Knowledge way, it teaches that there's at least three perspectives to everything. And none of them are better than the other. They're just three different perspectives. Okay? So, in many cases, it's four. But there's always going to be at least three. That's the Lakota Star Knowledge way. Yeah? But when you believe in good versus evil, that's duality, because it's only two things. And then when you believe in that, see, you're like I said, you have this tendency to say, okay, uh, my side is the good side. We are positive. See, you're labeling positive as good. You're labeling your way as the solution. So then you say these dualistic statements like, if you're not with me, then you're against me. Or if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. See, those are all bullshit statements, because you're giving people only two options, which means you're hiding something. Because Lakota Star Knowledge says there's at least three. And when you only give two and you say yours is the good way, see, you're oppressing others. That's duality. And in duality, people label everything as good and bad. So they say positive is good and negative is bad. And this is totally, totally bullshit. So they label difficulties as bad. And they don't learn anything from difficulties. That's when a difficulty transforms into a mistake. Mistakes don't happen. Yeah? When you neglect to learn from it, then you make it a mistake. So you're the one who makes the mistake by neglecting to learn from that difficult experience. Yeah? So, um, so these are the basic differences between duality and Lakota Star Knowledge learning. But it's important to understand how duality works, because you can transform it. Because it only has two perspectives. Yeah? But in Lakota Star Knowledge, There's at least three. So you can use duality, you can treat it as a difficulty, and you can learn from it. But if you try to destroy duality, then you become dualistic. You take its power, yeah? You lose, you end up losing because you start seeing things in a dualistic way. That's the, what do you call that? The enigma? I don't know. I don't even know what that word means. I should look up words before I use them. Shoot. Anyway, that's irony. I don't know. It's you just have to learn how it works. Yeah, you learn how it works so that you know how to deal with it in an effective, healthy way. Yeah. So that's that's how that is. So when you have this kind of foundation, then you see you understand that weaknesses are not bad, that negative is not bad, and you understand that you know that you can't really love unless you learn, 'cause that's a part of life. Yeah. So to live is to learn is to love. Is basically how it goes. Yeah. That's the only way you know what love really is. When you believe in good versus evil, you don't really know. When you believe in good versus evil, what you end up believing is a false idea concerning love. And some people call that love addiction because it's an unhealthy concept where you say things like, I can't live without you. I am nothing without you. You complete me. You're my better half. We should breathe at the same time. See, that would be kind of stressful, yeah? We're just constantly watching that other person to make sure we breathe at the same time. That's kind of unrealistic. That is love addiction. That is not love. Yeah? That's a fear of intimacy. That's a fear of being alone. Yeah? That's that's is a fear of intimacy, a fear of being alone is self-oppression. You're oppressing yourself. Yeah? You have to be okay to be alone, and then you will be with somebody. Because we're not designed to be alone. Yeah? So, but when you live in a healthy way, see, you're going to attract somebody who's this way too. Yes? When you live in the star knowledge way, you're 100%. And you're going to attract somebody who's also 100%. They're going to live their life the same way you do, learning from difficulties so you can enjoy blessings. They have the same way of living. So when you enter a relationship with somebody like that, you understand that difficulties to the relationship can be transformed into opportunities in which there is increased love for one another, enhanced love, enlightened love for one another. Yeah, so the relationship is not 50-50. In a healthy Lakota star knowledge way, it's 100-100. And the relationship is a different thing. The relationship is a extension of your identity. So you're not completing each other. In a Lakota Star Knowledge healthy relationship, you are not completing each other. You still maintain your individual identity, but you're both creating a new identity as a couple. Yeah? Whereas in duality, it's really incomplete. In duality, they say, like I said, they say, oh, I need somebody to complete me, the kind of thing. I'm looking for my soulmate, that kind of talk. And that is unhealthy because it's incomplete. and it's based on false ideas of love that were that are constantly perpetuated and promoted in romance novels, love songs, romance movies. Yeah, they're constantly promoted and perpetuated by the media and by our other unhealthy friends. We're all, thinking wrongly, yeah, incorrectly. So this is the difference. Yeah. So this show is based on the Star Knowledge Way, where we look at anything and examine it from a healthy point of view. And then I talk about anything and examine it from that perspective. Okay? Now, when I say the Lakota Star Knowledge Way comes from our ancestors, you need to understand that most Lakota people today do not believe in this way. That most Lakota people today are dualistic. They're like everybody else. That's why there's so many problems on the reservation. Families constantly fighting against each other, and even within the same family. We're just like everywhere else in this dualistic world. We're not like our ancestors anymore. And another sad thing is most of us can't even speak our language. How can you truly be who you are without speaking your language? How can you say you're Lakota if you can't even speak Lakota? And why are you so scared to learn your language? There's no reason to not learn your language. Because think about it. It's available today. Yeah? To learn your language is available today. Think about your descendants. If you don't learn your language, you're stealing from your descendants. You're robbing your descendants. That's the way I see it. So you're kind of fucking up their future. Yeah. So my suggestion is get your ass in gear and start learning your language. If not for you, at least for your descendants, because it's gonna die pretty soon. Yeah. Think about that. It's a strong statement, but it's a difficult time now. Yeah, it's a very dire straits time now because our language is going to die very soon, and it's up to you young people. Are you going to keep it, or are you going to just let it go? Think about your descendants. Some people always say our ancestors fought for this, and yes, that's true. But you got to look the other way too, and you got to say, well, what about my descendants? If you say that your ancestors fought for you, then you should fight for your descendants. It's the same thing. Yeah, that's the Lakota way. Chi Lakon Wichoha Chahe Chayelo. Because that's the Lakota way. Okay? Keep connected like that. It's up to you. So I'm going to explain to you why today most Lakota people don't believe in what I just said. Today most Lakota people believe in a very Christian influenced way. Even Lakota people who are doing ceremonies, they're still doing it in a very Christian influenced way. Here's the key: if you believe in good versus evil, you're Christian influenced. That's duality. It's not the Lakota way. The world needs to know this because most people in this world, they think that, oh yeah, Indians were on the reservation hunting buffalo, and now we're all powwow dancers and flute players, and walking through the prairie quoting poetry like saying, from the land of sky blue waters to the shores of the Missouri River. Hey. My love is strong for you like the buffalo facing the storm. That's all fantasy, yeah. we, we a bunch of Lakota poets walking on the prairie. Ah, shoot. Anyway, this show is about reality, yeah. So I'm gonna explain this, yeah, because this is important. The world needs to know what happened to Indians from the time we were put on reservations. That's very crucial because that experience changed our way of thinking. We went from the Lakota Star Knowledge way to a dualistic way because of this experience. And this will show you what happens. Most young Lakota people, most young Native people, they don't even know that this experience happened because the people who had this experience in the early 1900s, they were traumatized by it. Post traumatic stress disorder. That's what they had. They could never talk about it because it was so painful. They never dealt with it. So even though they lived through it, they didn't survive. People call them survivors, but they're not because it's as long as it's too painful to talk about, they haven't survived. They're still victims, and because of that, they were not 100% there in their parenting and whatever they did. Because when you don't have peace with the difficulties from your past, you're not effective in your daily life. Whatever you are, whether you're a doctor, lawyer, teacher, plumber, um, husband, wife, mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, you're not 100% effective when you are not at peace with your past. And you're setting yourself up to fail. And you're putting unnecessary obstacles in your life's path when you're not at peace with your difficulties from your past. So this creates more problems. And that's why the reservation is the way it is. Now I'm going to explain what happened. Back in the late 1800s, when we were placed on reservations, they were prison camps in the beginning. And this is a situation where we couldn't leave, we were not allowed to hunt. Our knives and guns were taken from us, and we were only allowed to eat whatever the American government gave to us, which was really no good food. The quality of the food was okay when it left places like Chicago and stuff like that, but once it got to some of these train stations between there and the reservation, a lot of these handlers would sell it, and then they would buy old food and put that in there instead, and these middlemen would make a lot of money. Yeah. So what we got on a reservation was bullshit food. Yeah, it was really no good. And we ended up getting all kinds of diseases like heart diseases, hypertension, diabetes, things like that. And then at the same time, our language and ceremonies were declared illegal by the United States. So we were hit physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Soon after that, our minds became weak. These, as I said earlier, these are the four parts of the self. So with the four parts of the self being sick, we lost our connection to our sacred center. So we started to focus on communicating away from that. And then the priests came from the various churches, and they learned our ways and said that since our ways conflict with the Bible, that our ways are evil, that they come from Satan. They come from the devil. So in our weakened states, we slowly began to accept that. Now, another thing is that there were some Lakota people that didn't want to accept that. They wanted to hang on to the traditional Lakota star knowledge ways. And if they revolted, they were sent to a mental hospital in Canton, South Dakota, which was set up for all reluctant Indians in America that did not want to become Christianized. They were sent there. And these church priests also committed the medicine men, medicine women, holy men, holy women. They committed all of them to these mental asylums too. This way, the people would not go to them for help, that they would come to the churches. They wanted the Indian people to only go to the priests and not their traditional healers. So they sent the healers to this mental asylum to die. And if you are radical, you were sent there to die too. Yeah. So while this is happening, the priests are saying to the Indian people, if you believe our way, we will help your children. And so, it was a very, very dire straits time. And so a lot of Indians became Christians because of that. Like I said, we were weak-minded too at that point. And those who stuck it out, there were people who refused to accept Christianity, but they went to church anyway. What they were doing was they were putting up a candy store front. On the outside, they were acting like good little Christian Indians, but on the inside they weren't. They were star knowledge people. Yeah? They did this because they didn't want to get sent to that mental asylum to die. That's sad, isn't it? But that's part of what happened back then. And it's because of these people who maintained this knowledge in secret. Thanks to them, they passed it down, to certain people like me, and we still have this knowledge. And I have this show, and I'm sharing it with you. Because this regards the sacred center. And we all have that. Yeah, this is not a Lakota thing. This is a Ikje Oyate thing. Ikje Oyate means human being. When you live this way, as I said in the beginning, you communicate as a human, not as a Lakota, not as a German, or a Japanese, or an African. You communicate as a human. Yeah, that's really important to know. So that's how it was back then. Yeah. Now remember, I said that the priest said to the Indians, "We will help your children." So they took the children away from the parents, sent them to boarding school hundreds of miles away, where these children were tortured to speak only English and learn the civilized Christian way. If they spoke about home, they were tortured. These schools didn't do background checks in those days. Yeah, the pay was really low, so they got really no good teachers in these schools. A lot of these teachers were sadistic. They got sexual pleasure from torturing people. And here, this is like summer holiday camp for them. And the same thing for perverts. A lot of perverts now had their pick of the litter, and they could get away with it. That's what happened. A lot of these children were murdered, they were killed, they were raped, they were molested. And there's a lot of unmarked graves near these schools. Not all these children are accounted for. So, those who made it through what they learned was whatever they saw. Because a lot of these children never went back home. They were told by the priests that their families had died and that there was nobody there. And that broke their hearts. This is why some of these children, they were so sad they couldn't eat. And they ended up starving themselves to death. And those who made it through, like I said, they didn't really survive because they were not able to process all these emotional traumas that they experienced. They didn't know how, because the only adults that were around them were these unhealthy, abusive people, teachers, dorm matrons, cooks, janitors, priests. They were all unhealthy to them. That's all they knew. They learned how to become victims, and they learned how to become abusers to those who they considered weaker than themselves. So they didn't really survive. A lot of these children that made it through these schools, they had a lot of traumas that they didn't know how to deal with because all they saw was abuse. That's what they learned. There was no adult healthy role models to emulate. And remember I said these children were told that their families were all dead. So they didn't go back during summer holiday. They just stayed at these schools and worked. So when they left these schools, they tried to live in mainstream America. Nobody accepted them. They would say, you're a heathen. You're a dirty Indian. So they couldn't even get jobs off the reservation. And when they went back to the reservation, to their people, they ran into more problems. Many, many times they were not even accepted by their own people because their own people were saying, you're too white. You act like a white man. So they're caught in between. So a lot of them turned to alcohol to try to hide all of it, to try to forget everything. They turned to alcohol and then later drugs. There were some who tried to make it. They married each other because they knew each other went through the same thing. And they didn't want their children to go through what they went through. So they didn't teach them the language. They didn't teach them the culture. Those children, the children of these first generation boarding school people, those children are today's elders. When they were born, they didn't learn the language. They didn't learn Lakota Star knowledge. They never got the opportunity to. When you look at an old person on the reservation today, they're not the connection to the ancient past. No, they were born in a Christian background at a time when the reservations were strongly Christian. So this is what happened. That's a native experience that a lot of people don't realize. This is what happened all over America and Canada too. So the next generation, they are sent to boarding school too. No choice. It's a little bit better, but they're still abused. They're still getting treated really no good. And so they grow up, have children, and they don't teach their children anything. What can they teach them? They don't know anything concerning their own language. This is why today most people cannot speak their own language, and what little cultural information they know is Christianized, meaning it's dualistic, and it's not the original ancient form. Okay, so the first generation of Indian kids that were sent to boarding school, since all around them were unhealthy adults who did nothing but abuse them, they didn't receive healthy parenting. They missed things that they should have learned about life. So they're lacking emotional development. So when they grow up, and those who make it through these boarding schools and then they have children, those children are also lacking that emotional support, that emotional development, because the parents don't know how to do it. Yeah? All they knew and all they learned was abuse. All they experienced in these schools was abuse. So they have a hard time trying to be a healthy parent. So they do the best that they can. But the children still are not receiving the proper emotional development, the experiences that healthy children should receive from healthy parents. They're still missing that. And so when that second generation grows up, they know even less concerning healthy parenting. And so their children receive even less. And every time this happens, the next generation becomes more dualistic than the previous one. So let me try to say that again. The first generation boarding school kids, they didn't receive proper parenting skills. So when they have children, their children are not receiving healthy training that they should be receiving. They're receiving even less than their parents. Now that second generation, when they grow up, see, they know even less. So when they have children, those children are receiving even less, and it gets worse with each generation, which also means that the less healthy emotional development they receive, the more dualistic they become. So with each generation is more becoming emotionally underdeveloped, they're also becoming more dualistic. So today, it's a huge mess on the reservation. We're incredibly, as a whole, we're incredibly underdeveloped emotionally, and we are incredibly dualistic. We're quick to attack each other. We're quick to pull each other down. We're just like the rest of the civilized, dualistic world. Notice I didn't say white man, because this is all over the world. It's not just among white countries. It's all over the world. Wherever there is a dualistic ideology, where one gender is considered less than and property of the other gender, you're going to have incredibly underdeveloped emotional people, which equals incredibly dualistic people. And that is unhealthy. So that started by the time of the late 1800s on the reservation.